this session, Josh will be discussing the tension that's found between Jesus and the religious rulers of the Hebrews. In the end, we will be confronted with this question: what have you deemed off limits to God?
All right, so we're talking skeptics, we're talking faith conversations. Some of the most intense skeptical conversations we see Jesus have in the New Testament come from the conversations that he has with the Pharisees. Now, most of us as believers, we struggle to identify with the Pharisees. We all know someone who is sort of a Pharisee in their mind and who's hypocritical. We all know people like that, but we struggle to really identify ourselves as that in any kind of way, shape, or form. But as we dig into the conversations that the Pharisees have with Jesus, there is this sort of aspect of the conversations that we can probably identify with, that they are skeptical about Jesus in some of the same ways that you and I can be skeptical about Jesus. You see, for the Pharisees, their issue was control. Because they were the religious rulers, they were the ones who kind of dictated to the people what it meant to be right in the eyes of God. So here are some things they had settled in their mind already. They had settled in their mind this idea of what the afterlife was. They had settled in their mind what made someone good or bad. They had it settled in their mind who God blessed and who God didn't bless, and why he wouldn't bless them, or what made those individuals good or bad. And so we can see that the power struggles and the dynamics that come into play when Jesus comes onto the scene, because Jesus comes onto the scene in this Bob Dylan-esque fashion where he begins to declare that people who are winners are now going to be losers, and people who are losers are now going to be winners because times are a-changing. And so one of the conversations that we pick up on, we find in Matthew 22. And here's what it says. Then the Pharisees went and plotted together how they might trap him in what he said. And we see a lot of these kind of conversations happen throughout the New Testament, but this one is of particular interest to us. So the Pharisees send these individuals to go ask Jesus a question. Now, the question might seem innocent, but it's not really. The question is a way to entrap Jesus in order to kind of wrestle control away from Jesus from the following that he's built. And so the question that they ask is this. They ask him, should we pay taxes unto Caesar or not? And again, this is a weighted question because essentially what they're asking Jesus to comment on is essentially politics, right? So politics, even in our culture, is this very dangerous thing where we can make people angry really, really quickly. And this was true of the Pharisees' question to Jesus. They knew that this question had no right answer. He was going to make someone mad. And again, this effort was to kind of, again, limit Jesus' control, to take back the reins of the things that Jesus was kind of stripping away from them and their influence. And so they asked Jesus the question, should we pay taxes to Caesar? And so again, there is no right answer to this question. If Jesus says that yes, we should pay taxes, he's going to anger lots of people around him. You see, the Jewish people were a heavily taxed people. They were taxed by the Pharisees, by the religious leaders. They were taxed by Rome. Some historians estimate that a Jewish family would pay almost 50% of their annual income in taxes. Right, so we complain about the IRS all the time, but imagine paying 50% of taxes. Everyone paying 50% of their income to taxes. So if Jesus responds that yes, paying taxes to Caesar is good, then he's going to anger all the people who have begun to follow him. And the Pharisees know this. They also know that if he says, no, let's not pay taxes unto Caesar, he's going to make an even greater enemy, Rome itself. And it would give them reason to take Jesus and present him before the Roman rulers to say, this man is trying to start a fight, he's trying to start a war, he's trying to lead people to not pay their taxes. And so again, we see the Pharisees wrestling control away from Jesus because Jesus has begun to touch things that they had deemed off limits. And this is how perhaps you and I can relate to the Pharisees, because we have this other skeptic inside of us. We have things that we have set in our minds that Jesus can't really touch. We have things set in our minds that we want ultimate control over, that we don't want to move or budge, that we don't want Jesus putting his hands on or taking away or moving or touching or changing the way we think about some things. And this is where you and I are very similar in our skepticism toward Jesus, because there will be times where Jesus will call us to things that seem scary, or he'll call us away from things that make us feel threatened, that feel like that Jesus is taking control of things that we deemed ourselves to have ultimate control over. And so one of the biggest questions that we have to ask ourselves as we're walking through faith and as we're walking in this life with Jesus, and as we encounter things that we become skeptical of and we don't really want Jesus messing with, we have to ask ourselves, what in our life have we deemed to be off limits? What are things in our life have we deemed that, okay, God can have all these other things, but I don't want him messing or changing or confronting or moving these particular things? So there are many aspects of our lives that we've given over to God, and we say, okay, God, you can have control over these things. But there's probably a few things in our hearts and lives that we've deemed off limits, that we don't want God taking control of. And so the question we have to ask ourselves, we have to ask that little skeptic inside of us is, what are we not giving God ultimate control of?
All right, so Josh, you kind of got into this idea that we want control. This is mine. This is God's. If we were to take that even more into our context, what would be some thoughts you'd have about how we apply that to our lives?
I think from person to person, you're going to have different answers to what do I want control over, and I think that in different stages of life, that answer will change, whether it's maybe our kids, maybe it's our immediate future, whether it's maybe our careers even. A lot of times, we're really good at segmenting our lives in such a way where it's we have our lives kind of pieced out and it's this is the God piece and we fail to see that when we actually follow Jesus, Jesus wants all those pieces and he wants to be involved in all those pieces and he wants us to submit to him in all those pieces. But there's probably some things that we would even seek to kind of secretly withhold and say, okay, yeah, God can do whatever he wants with these other pieces, but this one piece is kind of reserved for me. And so I think that a lot of us do that. A lot of us can relate in that way, and a lot of us live our lives that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's those verses in the Bible where I like 80% of what this says, but this last 20%, I'm just going to skip over that because I'm not ready to deal with that right now.
Yeah.
And so I think we all maybe have those areas where we like thinking we're in control of that area. So I think it'll be really interesting. We'd love to hand it back off to your group. And I think that could be some great discussion just to dig into those together about, what does it look like to really be all in and surrender control over to God in your life?